to that. So I'd love to invite our participants to introduce themselves today. I'd love to invite Addy to start, and then we'll move along the row.
All right, hi everyone, I'm Addy. I'm a fifth-year law student, and I just graduated from an arts degree majoring in sociology. I've been at university for 4 years now, and that coupled with 2 years experience working in student engagement and transition with the university has given me a few interesting perspectives on student engagement and activity over the last few years. And I'm just keen to have a good discussion about that today.
Hi everyone, my name is Habib Salem and I'm a third-year Bachelor of Design Computing here at the university. And in fact, I also am a staff member here as well, working as a customer experience designer, where I really do fill in the gap between, the technologies we do create and the end users who, are mainly our students. I've also worked in previous roles at the university, such as an equity student leader, where we used to make a lot of resources for students from disadvantaged background, whether you'd be first in family, have a disability. And I also used to work as a student ambassador as well, where, I would a part of the domestic recruitment and access team where, would bring in a lot of students, particularly from equity background. So hopefully when I graduate, I'm really keen to, give back to the university as they've educated me within, the whole world of user experience.
Wow. Hello, everyone. I'm Mac. I'm a second-year Bachelor of Arts Advanced student. I have 2 majors, art history and history. I also have 2 minors, philosophy and religion. I am possibly what's categorized as a mature student, although I don't like that word because I am probably not very mature. So I will say I'm a cultivated student. I come back to university to study, to build on. I believe education and learning and working is dynamic. So I am 48 years old. I've come to a point in my life where society tells me you need to work until you're 70. And I look around in the jobs that I'm doing and I think, it's time to change. So here I am, ready to change.
My name is Juana. I graduated with Bachelor of Pharmacy and Management last year, and I just graduated from the Master of Public Health major in research, and my supervisor here today. I'm so happy. And also my other lecturers in the past. And I'm currently thinking about doing a part-time PG cross-culture and linguistics, because I just think it's something else and it's kind of going to be fine while I take some time off with my family. So yeah, I'm here today to hear what other students think about university as well.
Hey everyone, my name is Yoshika. I'm a 4th-year student, currently going into my 5th year of a Bachelor of Biomedical Engineering degree. I've been working as a peer support advisor with the university for about the past year or so, and I've witnessed a lot of student experiences, including my own, obviously. And I've also been involved in a bunch of student extracurriculars here at the university, more specifically mental well-being and physical well-being. And so I believe I'm really keen for this discussion today to hear what people have to say.
Thanks, Yoshika. Hello, everyone. My name is Janet. I'm a pharmacist and I'm also a lecturer in the School of Pharmacy. I currently coordinate the Foundations of Pharmacy unit of study, and I'm also the first year coordinator for my degree program. So I have a really important role of helping students to transition into university, but also to help them start their professional journey as pharmacists. And I'm really excited to be here today.
Hi, I'm Janine Coop. I'm a lecturer in accounting at the Business School. I teach core accounting units in the Bachelor of Commerce and the Master of Professional Accounting. I'm also the faculty advisor for a student society called Beta Alpha Psi. So I'm really passionate about the student experience. And I've been here for a very long time and I've taught a lot of first-year students. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks, Janine. My name's Tim. I teach economics here at Sydney. I've been here a long time, in fact, and I've been actually teaching economics for an awful long time. So it seems. Of course, nothing has prepared me, as we all know, for what's happened in the last 2 years. I've taught everything from postgrad, undergrad, massive first year units, and also intimate honors units. I'm particularly interested in I think partly in economics, because we have so many international students. I'm particularly concerned about international students and how they deal with this online world, of course, given that most of these guys are in serious lockdown and look stuck in their home country, China in particular. So I'm inspired to be here today. It's fantastic to see this kind of Cambrian explosion in ideas and around online teaching and learning. It's great to be here, and I hope the panel can add to that experience.
Thank you so much. We can certainly see that there's a brilliant variety and breadth and diversity of experience here, and lots of enthusiasm for this discussion. Before we go any further as well, if you want to tweet about things that you're talking about today and learning today, the hashtag is, oh, remind me, Alex or somebody.
Hashtag SidTeach22.
Thank you. Yeah, so feel free to use that and tweet about the things we're doing today.
Sorry, Sarah, can you just allow me the option to screen share, please?
Yes, because we're kicking off our discussion today with a bit of a visual prompt.
Oh no, wrong one. Sorry, everyone, hold please.
That's all right. That's tech. We all know about
It
tech
is.
from 2 years of dealing with tech and it working sometimes and not other times. Or 3 years even.
Danny, could you give me a hand, or maybe Esther? I just need to screen share and I seem to have disabled it somehow. It's a co-host camera.
Yeah. Sarah, can you make H70-1040 the co-host?
It is, I think it is a co-host.
Co-host.
It is a co-host.
Totally. And like we were saying before, people have been very kind in teaching spaces when tech is shaky.
Thank you, Danny. Round of applause for Danny, everyone.
Yay.
Thank you. All right, here's our hashtag SidTeach22 using camel case, please.
Oh, thank you, Alex.
All right. Ready?
Yeah, sure.
Go.
Pick your slide. Fantastic. It's worth the wait. So the starting point for our discussion today, we've got a bit of a collage on this slide. As you may have seen, academics have been posting on Twitter about facing these empty lecture theatres on campus. And here you can see some of these and some of the responses. There's quite a variety. And as a way of beginning to map the current teaching and learning landscape that we all find ourselves in, we'd like to ask our panel and also everyone attending in the room and on Zoom, what do you think or feel when you look at that slide of empty rooms? And we'll start with you, Addie, but for everyone else, feel free to contribute to this Slido as well.
Yeah, I think it just sort of reflects what the teaching process has gone through in the last 2 years. What I've noticed, at least, is there's been a significant disconnect in the last 2 years between the teaching process and the learning experience and the overall university experience. When I first started university, I think I noticed people were as keen to go to their lectures and tutorials just as much as they were keen to go to socializing events with their peers or their tutors or lecturers. And over the last couple of years, I think that's been separated, and the learning experience has often been restricted to the classroom, and not just any classroom, the online classroom. And when people start moving back towards these in-person modes of learning, I think that separation from the overall university experience of engaging with your tutors and your peers outside the classroom environment is often reflected when they're moving back into this in-person mode of teaching. When I first actually started working at the university, we were working on tracking student engagement and retention. And one of the things we used to do was interview students and survey students on what they felt was what the biggest impact of their learning experience was, what their tutors did to help them stay engaged in the course content. And almost all of them pointed to the tutors, socializing with the tutors outside the classroom. And now that we've moved to a very restricted model, I think student engagement is obviously going to lag in respect to that, in relation to that. And I think that's what these empty classrooms really indicate.
Thanks so much, Addie. Habib.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting one, actually. I think something to do with, give me a moment, let me think of this. I think it's just really reflecting, as Addie said, just a big change of how we've delivered lectures in the past 2 years. If the whole theme of today is about being human, I also think it does reflect that, our students, bothered enough to come into a 9 a.m. lecture. And if they do have an online option to sort of wake up, I know that sounds a bit odd and going, oh, come into a lecture and come in and have fun and, learn, because this is what we're essentially paying for. But, it does reflect a bit of humanness about ourselves to go, you know what, if this is at 9 a.m. and if I can wake up at 8:45, that would be absolutely amazing. I'm not going to lie, I'm guilty of it. I've definitely done it. And it sort of doesn't just reflect what's going on in the lecture world of how we're really moving online, but it also reflects about what's going on, in industry as well. Everything is going online in industry. I know working in ICT myself, we're on a fully online environment. And I do think university has a sort of a prerogative to sort of emulate what's happening in industry. Now, that's not to say that, you go to university for a job. I personally disagree with that statement, but, a lot of students do come here to find a job. And I think university has that responsibility to emulate what's happening in the real world. So yeah, I think what's really all these empty lecture theaters, you're always going to have people going, oh, it's so flexible and it's so easy, but then you're going to have the other half that's going to go, well, you're missing out on the experience. So it's a really interesting issue. Yeah.
Good, such great points. I've done that too, of course. Waking up. Mac, we'd love to hear from you.
When I look at that picture, I see efficiency and accessibility. For me personally, I can only talk about my own experiences. My day is very different. 8:30, wow. I can't remember the last time I woke up at 8:30. I'm a mum of 4. I'm up at 5:30 if I'm lucky. So I see it as convenience. I see it as accessibility. I see it as efficient for me to be able to fit it into what I need to get done. But I also miss out as well. I myself went to university the first time, and I see coming back now very, very different. You do miss out on a lot, but that's how the world was then. The world is very different now. And how I see my children being told to manage themselves in life is very, very different. I think we have to remember that university has to remain the hub. And I would disagree. I think you do come to university to get a job. You do come to finish yourself off in a way, or to start yourself off in a way. We do have to definitely don't make it so comfortable that when you do then get out into the workforce, you're so used to being looked after that you're not going to manage. And I feel that a bit because I've already worked in industry. So I've sat in lectures and actually just cringed at how we've been just helped in a way, I would suggest. But in another part of me, I just think, wow, that's so amazing that that help is offered to you as a student and that you're actually seen as a person. There's no way I would have even asked a question like, could you please tell me where the reading is? 25 years ago, I would have been thrown out of a lecture. I would have been asked to, like, when you're ready to come back to class and bring it. Whereas we can waste 25 minutes of a lecture and then the lecturer will say, I'll send you a link. What you're sending me a link? Okay. But that's amazing because there is that human connection and that is that accessibility. I think the thing we also need to look at is it's a network. You're building your network in your industry. Your lecturers are your industry. The person sitting next to you is going to be in your industry. Maybe not in the exact one I'm working with, but in 5 years' time, this might be the guy that I'm asking to do business with out there. So if I'm not here meeting him, how am I going to work out there? It's not going to work. So you have to also have a certain amount of come into the hub, come in and integrate with each other.
Those are the great points about connection and also about care. Wana. Yeah.
So I think everyone has different point of views, which is really, really good because based on what I heard, I think I can share something different because for me, like I use social media a lot. And whenever I see there's some kind of neutral or kind of negative kind of social phenomenon, I would love to dig into the thing and see what's actually going on. And when I actually see the post, like the tweet, which saying it's a 9 a.m. lecture, and then the lecturer was saying that's his first lecture at the University of Sydney. And then he's saying it's the empty theater. And then I see the time, which is around May 16th, which is toward the end of the semester where everyone got a lot of assignment due, which increased the chance of missing lectures, like especially the in-person one, even though before the COVID. So I'm thinking that's kind of reasonable. But when I see the tag UC, I was like, I'm a UC student and I've been here at the university for 8 years. I think if my friends or family sees that post, they will be thinking that I'm not attending the lecture because that's the thing. Like, I was like, I have to explain to them that I am a good student. I go to lectures, but it's not the case. And to be honest, if it's from other university, I was like, oh, that's pretty normal because I'm from UC. I go to lectures. I'm not too sure about other universities, but if UC student, they go to lectures. And then another thing is that I'm thinking that based on my experience, like for my master's of public health, like even though it's an online degree and we got all the live kind of lectures online, for the guest lectures, not many people attend that. We have around 200 students for my cohort. And then for guest lectures, there's only like maybe 15 to 20 students attended and it's online, which means they can just wake up at 8:50 and go to the lecture online because it's online. So I'm thinking that in case it's like a long run kind of thing, the other guest lectures, which I personally think are very valuable because they share about their experience. And I think if that's the case and it's on social media, in the long run, maybe not many guest lecturers would love to participate when we invite them to have a lecture with us. And for the student point of view, they are actually losing this kind of valuable guest lectures. And I think we have to maybe think behind that. And to be honest, I was thinking about a solution for those kind of very important lectures. It's kind of evil from a student point of view, but I think maybe make them kind of compulsory, like we give them attendance marks, which encourage them to come to lecture. And in case it's an attendance marks assignment kind of thing, if they actually can't attend, they can apply for special consideration. So overall, maybe this can help with solving the problem. And yeah, so that's what I'm thinking.
There's really interesting points about the impact of on wider expertise that might be available. Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you. Yashika.
Yeah, so I think a lot of really interesting points have been made. But just looking at the screen right here, I think the biggest word that's been highlighted is disconnected. And that's really interesting because I believe in our generation, a lot of connections are formed virtually over social media. And what may be perceived as disconnection because it's not in person may actually be a wider form of connection. And also I think having studied online for over 2 years, a lot of the time students are prioritizing convenience over human connections because you're able to form these online, especially with a lot of clubs and societies having online events. And that's how students are actually able to widen their network. And I believe convenience is bigger because a lot of people are not also just studying, but they're working, they're doing other things as well. And sometimes attending lectures may not be the priority, especially if they're recorded and students can just watch that in their own time. So I believe it's heartbreaking for lecturers, obviously, to rock up at 8, 9 a.m. and prepare all your content and have no one show up. But students might not necessarily be disengaged. They're just watching the lectures in their own time.
Great points about strategic kind of time management as well, and what you choose to do with time and different forms of connection. Thank you. Janet.
Yashika, I kind of agree with you. And I just want to say hats off to my first year students, all 150 of them that log in on a daily basis over the last 13 weeks. So I agree with Yashika because I think I've really formed some pretty important connections with my first year students online. I kind of feel that I've been able to engage with students that normally wouldn't engage in a face-to-face lecture theatre. The ones that aren't so confident in speaking English, they can put on the chat, they can, respond to things, they can respond to a poll. So it's been really for me, it's been a positive experience giving lectures online. And I think hearing from all of our student reps, the thing that I think as a teacher, it's thinking about reflecting on what it is that you need for a student to be on campus versus what could actually be a online experience for the conveniences that technology affords, because let's face it, students have very complex lives these days. Very, very different to when I was a student here. They've got more responsibilities, especially post-COVID. So I think moving forward, it's being reflective about, as teachers, what should and shouldn't be online, or what could or couldn't be online. That's kind of my take on it.
That's fantastic. Again, picking up that point of different modes of engagement, working for different people. Janine.
When I looked at that photo, I felt really sad, to be honest, because well, this room here, I haven't been in this room since 2020. I used to lecture in this room, and this was part of my connection with students, was starting the lecture in this room. I never stood there. I was always all around the place. I was up and down the aisles. I was sitting in chairs next to them, and it was part of forming this connection with the unit that we're studying accounting together. This is how you get to know me. Yeah, and I care about you because I'm demonstrating that with my interaction, and you're getting to know each other. And then we continued on that connection then in tutorials, on discussion board, etc. So I felt that now I'm missing that because I don't make that initial connection with the students. The only people that I'm seeing, and it's online, I haven't taught in a classroom face-to-face since 2020, I will be next semester, is that I don't make that initial connection. So they don't know me, and it just makes it a lot harder, I find. So while I understand the need for flexibility in people's different lives, and I've seen it with my own children, they've both been at university throughout this, and there's definitely, yes, that choice of convenience over what might be more effective for their learning. So it's a really complicated issue. I'd really like to know more about what is, as Janet said, most effective online, what's most effective face-to-face. But I think there's that whole bigger picture of why do we come to university and what else we get from the university experience. And if you're not here on campus, you miss out on a lot. That's my opinion. Yeah.
And it's such an important point about those personal connections with place and with each other and feeling connected in that very material way. And finally, Tim.
Yeah, one of the problems with going last, of course, is that everyone's already said everything I was going to say. But I just especially like to echo Janine's remarks. That photograph reminded me, in fact, of a very specific day. It was the week 3 in semester 1 of 2020. The Ruby Princess fiasco had just evolved over that weekend. I had a Tuesday morning class in this very room. The previous week, there'd been about 150 students here, early in the semester, of course, so it would have been later, smaller later in the semester regardless. But anyway, on the day I showed up on that Tuesday, 3 people were here, and of course they were sitting at the back. So it was dark, and I came in, and you know, is anyone here? Is anyone out there? And indeed they were there, and I got them to move to the front of the class, and I gave a standard class I would have done had there been 150 people in the room. But photograph reminds me of what we miss. It's this human connection. It was always the case after class, half a dozen or maybe more students, depending on the time of the semester, would come down to the lectern at the end or in half time when I had a break, and they'd ask me questions. I get to know them. Some of them would come, of course, every week. You get to know them, you recognize them on campus, you see them in the lineup for the coffee, you might even see them at the pub on Friday or whatever, and you can relate to them as humans and talk to them about their study, and that's what I miss. And so that photograph reminded me of that. And I've done the HiFlex thing. It doesn't quite work in the same way, and there just aren't enough students, I guess, to make those connections. So yeah.
Thank you. And you did add something that no one had said before, which was the importance of those ordinary kind of quotidian connections on the edges of things, which are really are important. Thank you.
Thanks, Alessandra. So, as we all know, there's been a recent explosion of opinion pieces written in places like the New York Times, Times Higher Ed, the Chronicle of Higher Ed, and one of them was in fact the inspiration for this symposium, about how particularly disengaged students seem to be at the moment, more so than for some people at any time in their long teaching careers. And in fact, a conversation I had with Janet about this was one of the reasons why we decided to assemble this staff and student panel for this. So I'd like to go to our teachers first and ask them to share perhaps a recent experience with this, and then in 1 or 2 sentences, the impact it's had on you, on the students. I'll start with Janet, please.
It's hard to think of. There's many things to think about. I actually want to start on the positive note, and that is thinking about what works online versus what works in person. So at the start of semester, we had a lot of disruptions, COVID, floods, and everything in between. And so my students actually lost that connection to build team members, to build their teams and to interact with each other. And it actually took an unexpected turn in my unit of study. And we looked at, my students went to a museum field trip to work with historical artifacts to study the history of pharmacy. And an unexpected gain from that was I put these students into groups that they haven't really seen each other, haven't really interacted with each other, put them in an unfamiliar environment in the museum, working with unfamiliar objects. And it had a gain of students really building teams because they got to really see in a very authentic way just the different perspectives that students brought to a team, their different strengths, and being able to just be a little vulnerable and saying, I actually don't understand what this object is. What is this thing? And being able to solve problems together. So I felt that that was a really good way for students to go from, I guess, not disengage, but to form those really important and meaningful connections with each other before they went on to do a group assignment. So that was an unexpected gain from my unit of study.
Thanks, thanks, Janet.
What Janine has.
Beautiful. Yeah, Janine, please.
I've been teaching here for about 15 years or longer. I've never seen such disengagement, which has really concerned me. What I've noticed is the tail end of the students who do poorly has just increased. And this is really in undergrad especially. So that's really been very concerning. The number of students who don't do small stakes assignments that would, I've never had that before. They've always done that. So that really worries me. And it's harder to get those students because I don't see them. It's harder to get them to come and seek assistance, even though there's a lot of help and we've put so much help out there. So there's that side of things, which I'm concerned about. But also, as Janet said, there's been opportunities. I've really had to rethink what I do, why I do it, and that's been good for me. As I say, I've been doing this for a long time. You kind of get stuck thinking, okay, it's working pretty well, I'll keep doing it. But there are different ways to do it. Looked at better ways of doing, say, group assignments. I'm not a fan of group assignments in the old way of, here you are, go off and do it, but really interactive, timetabled, short case studies where staff are there as case coaches. We're working together. So we've had some really good opportunities to try and bring that engagement together to make up for that. But overall, I've found, the disengagement to be concerning. Unfortunately, I'm a positive person. Normally, I don't want to be negative. I'm normally a really positive person. I love my job, but I am really concerned about that disengagement that's happening.
Thanks, Janine. Tim.
Thanks. Well, I discovered a new low last week in terms of engagement. So I was reading my unit of study survey results. And one of the comments that the student had written was that, that this unit really needed to have tutorials. And I thought, well, that's kind of surprising because actually we do have tutorials. We've had one every week for the last 13 weeks. And in addition, I have an online live Q&A session as well. So you try to fight, as an economist, I guess, obsessed with measuring and looking at anything that could kind of quantify what's going on here. So I went in to the ED discussion board data, which is, I did that because the Canvas this data is really poor. So it's not very useful. Anyway, in ed, I went in to see how many students were engaging with ed, because we send out weekly announcements telling them about, well, the tutorials, among other things. So it turns out, I was astonished to find that 20% of the students in the class had not gone to the ed discussion board once. I mean, they never went there, despite a welcome message, an email, and we use SRES in the unit to try and kind of connect with the students, as you do. So, you know, that suggests to me that there's a large number of students who are basically not even reading their emails. And if they're not reading their emails, then SRES is powerless. And indeed, many things I do are going to be powerless because they're just not even connecting at that level. So this led me to think about, well, you know, I really do need to understand what's going on here. And the way, again, as an economist, I would approach that is to collect as much data as I can. It's a large unit, so there are a lot of students. I should be able to get enough information on that cohort. But of course, it's very difficult and time consuming to do this, and I haven't processed that yet. But so it's motivated me to try and understand what's going on. At least at a kind of statistical level.
Indeed, a very economist way to look at the problem, but we appreciate that. I'd like to move to the students now and ask you to share, at a level you're comfortable at, your thoughts and potentially shed some light on what's going on behind the scenes. And I'll ask Adi, Wana, and Yashika to respond, but we'll start with Adi.
Yeah, I actually think it's really interesting because a lot of the students on this panel seem to appreciate the flexibility and convenience of the online model. But I actually kind of agree with Janine and Tim, with the staff, that it's really hard to build human connections online. When I started uni, my engagement in any tutorial lecture was almost always dependent on the connections I formed outside of the classroom. And it's the little things that you don't really think about that much. So the 5 minutes you're waiting for your tutor or lecturer to arrive in the room, and you're just talking to your friends, your peers about the readings, or the readings that you didn't do most of the case. But you're building on those little experiences, those little discussions, and you're using that to form your opinions in the classroom. That's what I've noticed in the past 2 years in the online model. What I often did was log into the Zoom maybe 5 minutes after the class started, because that's when the tutor would start their discussion, and just move straight into what they had planned out to discuss in the entire tutorial or the lecture. And those little experiences were missed out, and you don't really appreciate or recognize the importance of those little experiences until you've lost out on it. And that's why I think it's really hard to form those human connections are so integral to the engagement you have with the discussion or with the opinion piece or with anything that you do in the classroom. And that's what I've noticed in these last 2 years.
Thanks very much, Adi. Wana, I'd love to ask you to share your thoughts.
Thank you. So I think firstly, as we've already mentioned, is normally happening with the UG student, because I also work with Yash at the peer support advisor from the student life team. And once we do the kind of welcoming sessions or international arriving sessions, we do a survey at the beginning. And if the students, they already completed a bachelor degree, they tend to participate in those sessions because they are willing to take those kind of initiatives to, like, presumably kind of seeking for informations, other connections, to just, to react first to any things they want to know. And then with the UG student, because they just graduated from high school, I think for high school, you have to attend in-person classes. But as soon as you go to university, you start to have those kind of online remote options available. And they might start to think, because of their age and psychological kind of things, they might start to think, oh, this is all university about. I tried so hard to push my marks upwards for the HSC. But then when I go to university, I've got this kind of online options available, which means I can take a break from my first year. And then based on my experience, even though for my first year cohort where everyone has to go to university in person, from first year up to fifth year, the number participating in class is decreasing because they just got other things to go on, or they've got other decisions to make or whatever. But then for those kind of students just graduating from high school and start to see the online options available, which means from the first point of view, they will think, oh, this is an option. And then for their cohort from first year to fifth year, it will be increasing even more. So I'm thinking that because the usual student, they are just graduated from high school, and then probably they can be the very first student in their family to go to like university. So there's like a social and psychological and environmental kind of phenomenon like resulting in the low participating rate. So I think it's like an overall problem.
Thank you for sharing that. Yoshika.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing might just be demotivation. Coming out of online learning, there's a lot of lethargy and just generally a lot of exhaustion with, sitting at home, staying at your computer screen day in, day out. And I think that kind of translates when you're going back on campus, because then you have to travel, you have to make the effort to interact with people, your lecturers, your tutors, your peers. And I think a lot of students just can't be bothered because you're just tired. And just to echo what Adi said, I think, forming those connections outside are really important, because if you have a group of your peers, or if you build a rapport with your tutor, that's what's really going to get you to come into classes, actually be engaged with the content, actually care about what you're learning. So I think it's a really sad reality, but it's just the effects of online learning and COVID. Yeah.
Thanks for that. I think what everyone said really, as we've been talking about this whole time, speaks to the importance of connection and using that connection to form a sense of belonging. I'll pass over to Alessandra, but I will just let you know that we have a Q&A in the last 15 minutes of this session where we'd love to ask everyone your questions. You'll see the details on the slide up there, so please pop them down. Alessandra.
Thank you for those thoughtful responses. It's definitely highlighting the importance of connection and the different ways that we want to all engage in it. So we'd love to hear your experiences about how people have helped you at uni this year. What's something that a teacher, a student, or a peer did that made you feel like you really did connect or belong at uni, and how did this help you? And so I'd love to ask Habib, then Mac, Juana, Janine, and Tim.
Thank you very much. I think one of my most heartwarming moments at uni would be maybe in semester, I'd say this semester, this year. So I can openly say I have Crohn's disease, and basically it's inflammation of the digestive tract, makes you tired. You don't digest food properly, you can lose a lot of weight, and flare-ups can hit at any time of the day. And so I'm registered with disability services, and I think they're great for me personally. Everybody's had very different experiences, and I'll appreciate everybody's experiences and everything like that. I've personally had a good one with them as well. So there is a thing where, if you're doing, if you're looking at assignments that had to be done, if you have a presentation, you actually don't get any disability extensions on that. So usually I get about 2 weeks extra, I get extra exam time, but with presentations, they actually have to happen on a set day, and you're not actually allowed to get any extension on that. And obviously my Crohn's disease doesn't care about what day, the presentation is, or, it sort of confuses me as like, why do I get these extensions on some assignments, but not all of them? Anyways, so one of the most heartwarming things was that I, spoke to my tutor, and she goes to me, hey, guess what? I've got Crohn's disease as well, and I'm going to help you out. And I go, what on earth can we do? And so she goes, look, let's start off. Let's take it step by step. Let's do a simple extension. Let's give you 2 extra days, and let's see how we go from there. And believe it or not, my Crohn's disease was flaring up. And I think even earlier within this year, I had to suffer, from, that nasty flu that's going around. And because I'm immunosuppressed, it makes the flu a lot worse. She goes, let's start with a simple extension. Let's move it up to the unit of study coordinator. And then let's get in touch with, special cons. And I also do want to mention that special cons does take a very long time to get back to you. So it can be a bit of an issue. So, but it was really nice to, have that tutor. It's not every day you find a tutor that has that sort of, has the same disability as you. And I was very lucky in that sense that she could sort of have that empathy for me. So I think it was a really sweet moment that someone actually cared. I wasn't just a student. I wasn't my student ID. I was Habib, and I have a disability, and this teacher could come out and help me. And it sort of felt like she was fighting for me. It sort of feels like the university infrastructure is trying to, stop you from getting these extra extensions. Like, why can't I just have an extra day or two because, I'm feeling sick? So it sort of feels like, why do the tutors have to fight on my behalf to sort of fight through the infrastructure that we've put in place to sort of get these extra, these extra considerations, like extra exam time? I've heard experiences from so many other students saying, I actually have a friend I met who also has Crohn's disease, and he doesn't get nearly as much extensions as I have. So it's always dependent on which disability officer you go to and how they perceive your disability. So that's my experience. So that was a really heartwarming moment. So shout out to that tutor. But yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing that. Mac, yeah.
I want to say to Janet and Tim, I feel sorry. My experiences have been that I've been incredibly connected to all of my teachers and all of my tutors. And I don't think I would have had that connection had I been physically present in class. I also have situations that make me a little bit individual. I'm dyslexic and I have ADS, so I am on the spectrum. And I find it incredibly hard to sit in a lecture and actually absorb information. I just can't. I'm too busy smiling and making sure that the teacher's okay and that I'm actually doing what is socially right in that lecture. And so being at home or being able to go for a walk and hear my lecture, or being able to have my visual notes spoken to me, just opened my world and made university accessible to me. And I actually was just a voice in a class then. So not only am I faced with those kind of issues, I'm also faced that I'm the mature student. So everyone shut your eyes. And if I say a mother of 4 who's 48, open your eyes. Is that what I look like? So for the first very long time of my course, I was just a voice in a class, and it just leveled the playing field, because everybody in my class and even my tutors and even my lecturers didn't visually see me and make that assessment. I was just a voice. And I was able to be very confident because I could get the material the way that I needed to be. And I had a lecturer who was amazing, and I kind of talked through music. And so we were sending songs to each other about how the day was, but that's how I connect. And, technology is always going to fall apart at the best times. We saw it here. I can remember one of the first bits of work I had to hand in. My next door neighbours had a house that they were doing renovations, and a tree went through it, and all of our internet went off and our electricity. And I sent an email, which meant I had to get in the car and go up to the shops, ask to plug in my phone to send an email to a teacher to say, I know my assignment's due, but this is, it's really a very interesting story. Here it is. And they were very open to just, okay, no problem. And that kind of engagement was easier, I think, because everybody was feeling it. I think we're in the middle of change. We are in the middle of change, and I feel for the teachers, I feel for the lecturers, I feel for everyone involved in making sure this industry, which is this university, keeps going, because they're having to change and be dynamic. I'd be really interested to see how the students who have been doing high school online for the last 2 years, coming through university in a couple of years, how they engage with you, because we're learning, and some of us are going to do it the right way, and some of us are not going to show up and not going to even know that there's a tube. But in 2 years' time, kids that have been doing perhaps online learning already may be totally different to us. We're sort of the point of change, I think. And I think it must be terribly deflating. But we also have to, I think, consider there's more people coming to university than there ever was. let's not just, and again, it's very easy for me to say, aim at the ones that aren't. Let's look at the ones that are, the ones that do want to be here, and the ones that are engaging with you. Take that, find that student that is coming to you and asking you questions and run with that. Again, I don't have to quantify my class, and it must look, you probably do. So many kids aren't turning up, or so many of us are failing. I guess you've got to look at how many are actually coming through and how many want to be here and how many, you can't make that person do that. We all have to be responsible for ourselves. And maybe teachers need to remember that. It's not your responsibility, it's theirs. So focus on the kids that do want to be here, focus on the ones that do want to engage. I'm not sure how that's going to look when you've got to quantify pass or fail or what that is for you. But maybe don't take it personally. It's not anything on you. You've probably engaged more students than you think. You're just looking at the ones that you're not.
Thanks so much for sharing that back. That's really wonderful. Yeah, Wana.
Okay, thank you for sharing. I think Mac, you mentioned something very important, just because like when we are in university, everything is our responsibility. So when other people actually take those initiatives and start to taking care of you, you feel that it's heartwarming. So I think in my past 8 years, I've got 3 things to share. I will be very quick. So the first thing is that for my Faculty of Medicine and Health, like towards the end of 2020, 2019, we start to have this kind of disability services, like share with everyone. Like my lecturer was saying that even though you don't have those kind of disabilities, just in case you want to talk to someone, we are here to help you because we just take care of you. Like everyone is present and you're a pharmacist. We want to make sure that you are healthy from the inside. So when you're serving other people, like everyone can be healthy for the environment and the society. So I actually took that opportunity to talk to one of my lecturers, and the thing was very smooth. It's just like a 20-minute Zoom session. And she shared with me that for university, you don't have to be perfect in everything you do. Once you got a qualification, you can do whatever you want. Even though you want to change career, you can still do it. But if you, in case you need to apply for special consideration, do it, because she shared with me that she maybe failed something because she was having something very important going on in her life and she didn't take that opportunity. I was like, I loved her responsibility and her being honest with me. So I actually applied for special consideration and I actually got a pretty good mark for that one. And the second thing, I think I'm not mentioning this because my supervisor is here with me, but it's just like for my last semester at the university, I feel very lucky and being valued because from my past experience, like I talked to other my peers, they are saying that some of the supervisors might be very busy and they might don't have the time to talk to you every week. But my supervisor was very nice. Like, even though sometimes I just want to be lazy this week. I don't want to do anything. But when I received her email saying that, how are you going up with everything? How are you doing with it? I was like, oh, my supervisor is still here with me. I have to finish this thing on time. Otherwise, what am I going to reply to that email? And I start to work on my things. So I think that I'm very lucky I got this kind of nice supervisors, but I understand that everyone's supervisors are very nice to them. It's just like, we have to communicate. We have to know like what everyone's doing, but I'm just thinking that it's a very nice experience. And another thing is like one of my peers at one of my units called Women and Children, she actually got her baby with her like while she was doing the class. At first, for 1 second, I just have to be honest because I'm human as well. I was like, why is that child crying while I was trying to listen to other people doing the presentation? But when I look at everyone else, because for that unit, we were doing, it's like a PG and everyone is like mature than me or whatever. But like when I see everyone else was kind of having the same thought as me, but we were all trying to be patient and listen to that lady explaining that I just got the child. I have to have her here with me. And please, if you can understand the situation. I was like, even though we do have that kind of evil thought for one thing, but everyone else is human. And the baby keep crying for the semester because it's just here with the lady. but we were like, oh, it's okay. Like at the first, for the very first, we were like, but towards the end, we were like, it's okay, just let her cry for a second. And she just feel more relaxed. And I think even though it's like a very real life situation, and I think if she needs to bring the baby to the actual class, it will be a different issue. But overall, like even though COVID and those kind of difficulty situations, but I think still like we are human. We can react to some kind of situation in a way that a normal human could react. So COVID didn't make us that kind of cold person that I don't want to see. So
Thanks so much, Juana. That's beautiful. And Janine, we'd love to hear from you, and then Tim.
Thanks. Okay, so the situation where I felt that I had connected happened just recently. In April, I received an email from a past student, and it was a student from that nightmare semester 1 2020 semester, and he had previously failed the unit twice. And in that semester, I pulled him aside and I said, we're going to work together. We're going to change the result here, and we're going to, work on some strategies to get you through. And then, of course, we all went online, and I was really concerned about him. Anyway, he sent me this email in April to say, thank you very much for everything you did, blah, blah, blah. But he's just got a full-time job in an accounting firm, and just saying thank you for everything you did. And that's when I thought, okay, this is why I do this job, right? It's that kind of thing. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure everybody here has had this. It's not about me, but that's why I do it. So having those connections with students and making a difference. And just to acknowledge the other conversations which have gone on, I do agree that flexibility is important and people have different needs. There has been a lot of positives that have come out of this. I'm not against change at all. I was very happy when all those floods were going on that I could teach my class from my room and not have to travel. So I'm certainly not saying let's go backwards, but I'm a person who thrives on in-person contact. It's the way that really works for me, and I think it works for a lot of people, but not everybody, and I acknowledge that.
Thanks so much, Janine.
I think I'll refer to the same class I spoke about earlier, the one with the phantom tutorials. I have a weekly Q&A, and every week about half a dozen students, the same half a dozen students inevitably would show up. Towards the end of the semester, they would even turn their cameras on, and we'd have a real two-way discussion, and I really looked forward to it. And they showed up every week. I guess they got a lot out of it too. And so that was a fantastic experience. It was almost like being in a classroom, having a group chat. It's a bit like talking to your relatives overseas through Zoom. It's not quite the same, but it's almost as good. So I got that feeling, and it was really, really very positive. And I'll have to admit that, of course, because I knew the students, I noted how they did, how their marks were in the final exam. Classic way to evaluate performance, and they were all very good students and did very well, as you would expect. So, what do I learn from that? It's hard, isn't it, in a unit where 20% of the students don't read their email, and you've got 5 or 6% who are super engaged and wonderful to interact with. And I'll point out also, this is a microeconomic theory class, so it's the sort of thing that makes accounting look interesting, if you know what I'm saying. So accounting is interesting.
Accounting is very interesting.
Yes, it is. And so, that was one moment, I think, in the last 2 years when I felt like I was a prof teaching at uni once again.
Thanks so much, Will, for sharing that. I'll pass to Alex.
Accounting is a life skill. It's important for everybody, no matter what. Thank you, Tim.
We did want a bit of banter, so I'm glad that came up. It seems to me that one thing that's coming up in addition to connection is communication, both ways. It seems to me like that's something that's becoming quite important. So I'm going to put that as my contribution to our last question, because believe it or not, we've only got a couple of minutes before we need to go to our Q&A. We have raced through. So I would love to ask all of our panel participants in one sentence. Think back to those empty lecture theatres we looked at the beginning of our roundtable and the responses on the word cloud. what's one thing you would like to see, not necessarily in that environment, more in the whole university environment that we've talked about? What's one change in one sentence you'd like to see to turn university into more of a connected human experience? Adi, I'd love you to start.
I would just say more training and more discourse about how to build connections in an online environment, about how to facilitate communication in an online environment. I'm not going to take up too much time, but I'll just say this, that most students who come in, especially I look at a lot of international students for work, and what they all complain about is they're coming into university straight from high school, and they have no experience with the whole university atmosphere, but they're just going right to an online learning format, and they don't know what to do. They're just trying to get a university experience, but they don't know how to build connections or communicate in that online nature. I agree with Janine that I don't think we should go back. I think we should build on what we've started already in the past 2 years, but we have to start early. In the first or second year, we have to start discourses about communication and how to find and facilitate our way around this new world that we live in.
It's a really interesting idea about blending the curricula and the extracurricular there. Thank you. Habib.
So this is sort of my forte, but I think we need to include a lot more co-design in the way we, design our units and design anything at the university. Proactive design is so important. The fact that we design things, the end user in mind, that we're getting out to students and we're asking them, all right, how do you want this week by week lecture to happen? Students' lives are so complex, and I know from myself, shout out to Adam, equity student team. We worked in educational innovation. Students come from so many different backgrounds. We're not a one-fits-all approach. First in family, First Nations background, disabilities. We've got so many things going on for us. Let's talk to the cohort of students we're teaching to, and let's work with what works for them. I know that when on a day I feel sick, is there an option for a student who has a disability like myself to actually stay home and have that time for myself? We always need the end user, the students in mind, when we're actually designing these units of study. And I think it's just so important, because that's what connection is all about, actually catering for everybody, not just designing one thing that would have been designed last year and then just putting it into a loop of a unit of study. We're in a constantly changing world, and we always need to be on top of what students' lives are and understanding that, and how we can incorporate that back into their learning.
Beautiful, thanks Habib. And just so that we can get to the Q&A, just a reminder, one sentence, everyone. Sorry, that's so valuable, but we've got valuable thoughts there too. Mac.
I'm so sorry, one sentence. Okay, to make it quick, I'll say bullet points. I'll say collaboration, communication, construction between teachers and students, and relevance. It's got to be relevant to where you're going. What's your product? Where are we going? Into industry, into life. Make it relevant.
Love that relevance. Wana.
I will try to be quick as well. So I think from an economic kind of view, some users, especially when they're very young, they actually don't know what they want. So when you ask them how question, they're like, what is the standard way? So my advice is to tell them what is the standard way. Maybe make a video of what is actually traditional kind of way of going to lectures, and they can have a survey afterward. What do you want for this? So maybe that's a solution.
Thank you. Yashika.
I think just to echo what Habib said, proactive design is really important. So I think having a variety of ways that you can deliver content is really important. So like whether it's in the form of a Kahoot quiz, I think those are really fun, or like a video or a Q&A session, just switching it up, because students all learn very differently.
And tell your engineers, you too. Love it. Janet.
Okay, I'm going to say one word, that is reflection. Think about what worked and what didn't, and systematically thinking about how we can look at what the strengths are and how to bring them into our future teaching.
Beautiful. Janine.
Collaborative learning, where staff and student take equal responsibility for the learning process.
And lastly, Tim.
I wanted to say I don't know is the answer I'm allowed, but no, I think I'd like more information on what works. Like Janine and others have said, I'd really like to continue with the extra things we've learned, the stuff we've learned over the last 2 years. Some of those things seem to work. I'd like to see the evidence, and I'd like the university to give me more feedback on all the sorts of information that lies in the background in Canvas and Ed and so on and so forth. I don't have time to analyze that myself, but the university can do that at scale. and they can give us some feedback, and that can give us some clues on what's working and what isn't working.
Thank you very much. Oh, you keep it. All right, thanks very much, everyone. So we're going to move to our Q&A now. And I think we will take turns reading out the questions and ask people to volunteer if they'd like to answer them. Probably maybe one student, one staff member, but our first question is a staffy question. And I will say that I think the staff we have on the panel here, obviously you've come here today to talk about your experiences, so I would consider you particularly engaged. So maybe you could speak on behalf of colleagues if you'd like to answer this question. It's not just students, I see staff making the same choices about convenience. Why would we expect students to be present and engaged if we as staff aren't? This is a tricky one. Would anyone like to put up their hand to answer our staff participants?
It is true. I mean, I know with staff and they're really struggling with the online at the beginning, going, I really want to get back in class. And now when they can, they don't, because, you know, it's easy being at home, and staff have a lot of things to juggle as well in difficult, busy lives. So yeah. And I think sometimes when we're on, if you're in a Zoom meeting, how many people here are multitasking when you're in a Zoom meeting? Like, honestly, hands up. Yeah. Yeah, that's the reality. So are we surprised when we're doing a tutorial and our students are doing the same? Yeah.
Thanks, Janine.
No answer, but
It might actually be a question of asking, what do students want? Do you want to be in the classroom or not? I think that's a good question to ask and have as a roundtable.
Yeah, I think our panel might give us a 50-50 on that one based on the things we talked about.
I
Juana,
want
please.
to answer that question. I was like, what is the student thinking? Because I think the way they ask this question, sorry, no offense to you, but it just feels that because other people are not doing the right thing or supposed to be the right thing, you want to take advantage of that because other people are not doing that. So you cannot do that as well. I think this kind of thinking is kind of harmful because you have to be responsible for yourself. Just because other people spit on the ground and you know it's ethical and moral not to spit on the ground, then you shouldn't do it. So if you think going to lectures are the responsibilities of student and staff member, you just do the way you think which is right, not thinking about other people not doing that, so I can not do that as well. So I think this kind of thought is very harmful. So no offense, but yeah, I think you shouldn't think in that kind of way.
I think you've highlighted something, and this is something we've talked about in the panel today, is that everyone has something, at the risk of sounding a bit twee, everyone has something going on that we don't know about, that we can't see. And we've heard some extremely personal things from you. And I'd like to thank you all for sharing those and that tell us that sometimes there's a lot more going on under the surface than perhaps we might expect. Our second question is about disability services. And I think this might be one that we collectively as a team in educational innovation take on and start thinking about. So I'm actually not going to throw that one to the panel, but I'm going to take that further and, you know, have a chat to maybe our students who've come here today about how we can maybe do better in that space, build on the resources we have. But we might go to the next question.
Yeah, so the next question is and it relates to all of the wider themes and wider contexts in people's lives that you've all highlighted in your answers today. Is disengagement a university-specific issue, or is it the general state of the world, climate change, pandemic, etc., driving a sense of overall despondency? If you don't believe in the future, are you really that concerned with a Canvas quiz? So I'll just invite whoever would like to answer that.
Oh, the mic.
A student and a mum. I see it is probably quite relevant. Things are changing, but student life is important. It goes back to you have a good day if you get up and make your bed. Simple things. So without focusing, okay, you don't believe in the future. So are you going to sit down and not believe in the future, or are you going to stand up and change the future? So let's engage that person that is thinking like that. That's a beautiful thought. We're all entitled to have that thought. Come forward and tell me you don't believe in the future. What would you like to change? How do you think that's going to change? You have the power to change that. So rather than let that thought process happen, let that feeling happen, let that emotion happen, then engage that feeling, engage that and draw that out. That's also normal. As a mum, I'm going to say normal teenage angst, normal student angst. We've all been there. Harness that, change the world, make the change. Fantastic that you see it. Do something about it.
That's so great to get your perspective on working with those kind of things that we're all faced with. Would any of our staff panelists want to respond to that one?
I'd just like to say quickly that it goes back to something I think Janine was talking about the changes you made to your teaching as a result of COVID and moving into small group assignments and moving into real case-based things. And to me, as you know, as a teacher myself, though admittedly one not on the panel today, it strikes me that this is a good argument for bringing that into the classroom and talking about that and building excitement and building an appetite for change through the, you know, the very transformational experience that education can be together. All right, I might go to the next question then. So this question to me sort of speaks to something that Mark was talking about this morning, actually, with our hopefully renewed focus in our new strategic plan on, it sounds like a focus on widening participation. Do you think the online lectures and learning might be advantageous to a very different group of students to the past? Sydney Uni used to be very much a college campus, and it certainly was when I was here, for students who were advantaged by being so close to their lecture rooms, either presumably on campus or in those close-knit suburbs that Mark was talking about. What do we think? Who'd like to chat about this briefly, about how the changes we've made over the last few years might bring in a different group of students? Thanks, Addie.
I think that's definitely the case, because when I first started university, I came in as an international student and I was taken aback by how many students didn't live on campus. I came in with that lens, that perspective of an American college experience where everyone lived on campus and everyone lived in dormitories. It was very convenient to get to class whenever they wanted to. And I saw that most students found it very hard. They were doing 2-hour train rides just to get to university every day. And I really didn't understand how they could motivate themselves to get to university every day, because I was waking up at like 20 minutes before class and just hopping in. And I found it so easy, and they all looked at me with disdain a lot of times because it was so easy for me. And the last 2 years definitely have opened up the possibility for a lot of other students. I mean, Max talking about her own personal experience, but even students who live so far away, it's so much easier now. And I think that kind of harks back to what we were all talking about. We don't really want to go back. We want to build on what we've started in the last 2 years and make accessibility an important part of the educational experience, which I think is going to be the case now.
Thanks, Addie. I can definitely see that link there. Any of our staff participants, would you like to? Thanks, Janet.
So I think it goes back to what I said initially about engaging with students that you don't normally engage with. So you're going to have a new group of people. So you're going to get even more engagement because you've got the ones that are living closer. But at the same time, if Zoom opens up, then you've got people living, 2-3 hour train rides. They can come in as well. And I think that's really important. And it's about leveling the playing field. And I think that's where the equity comes in as well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't live close to campus, and my children had the same situation at uni as well. So it's fabulous to got more opportunities, more flexibility. Just when you are in that Zoom class, I just say to students, please just engage, talk, get involved, actually just do it. Because I don't mind. It can be online, it can be face to face. It's the engagement that I'm missing. I don't mind how it is. Just please just engage.
Sorry, Tim.
Yeah, I used to teach in Canada, and it was in a small town, and so everyone was within walking distance to campus. And guess what? The students still didn't come to class at the end of the semester, so I'm not sure it makes a big difference. But the other thing, but obviously in Sydney, a huge place and with not a great public transportation system. But the other thing that occurs to me is that the uni has built thousands of units of accommodation don't have international students in them at the moment. So maybe that's something they could look into. And there's all that accommodation at Redfern, which is built for international students and must be empty now. So maybe we need to explore on campus more like the North American experience, where students go away to university. In this case, they'd still be in the same town, but they could get closer to class. That might make a difference.
Thanks so much, Jim. So the next question is quite similar about why would we come back to face-to-face. So we might switch to, we have got time for one more. If you're enrolling now, would you prefer to be given the choice in person or online for all courses through your degree so that you can decide what best fits your circumstances? Habib.
Yeah. All about proactive design. Whatever's happening at that moment fits the student's circumstances, then you can always change it. Just as easy as you can change your units of studies before the census date, can you change your mode of attendance? I think is extremely important because there are so many things going on. Students' lives are so complex, so it's all about proactive design. I think is really important.
I think it has to be a combination. I think you've got to provide an online lecture, but you must come in for a tute, or you must, I don't even know if you're going to call it a tute anymore. There has to be some kind of engagement option, because otherwise you're missing out a vital part. The beauty of the online thing is as an art student, I can walk through a museum in any part of the world now without actually being there. In saying that, you can imagine I can walk through a museum and see stuff, but until I actually hold an artifact or see a painting or get that experience of walking into the Vatican, I am missing out. So every student everywhere, if you think of that, is missing out. You still can understand, you can still get the knowledge, but you actually have to form a whole by being there. So don't throw it all out. Allow for accessibility, but call us in somehow. Make us responsible for coming in at some point.
I definitely agree because I am a kind of traditional kind of person. I think university is about you go into class and attend those kind of classes. But I think what other students have mentioned, online accessibility is also very important. So I think if I want to give a solution, is that you can apply for doing everything online, but you have to be like reasonable. You have to apply to be online because you've got supportive document to say that that's going to benefit you better than you actually be there in person in class. And if that thing got approved, I know this like extra work for the student life team, but I think in that kind of way, everyone is being responsible and everyone has been given the fair kind of options.
Beautiful. Thanks, Juana. All right, that's our time. There's so many great things that you all talked about today. I think the things that really came up for me were the importance of accessibility, the importance of being human, which was our core theme, which is wonderful, to our teachers, to our students in all of our relationships, and bearing in mind that we only see a fraction of what goes on in a person's life. And one of the, I suppose, benefits of the online things we've learned is that the things that we've taken up is that we can take that on board more and be a little bit more accessible in that space. So I'd just love to ask everyone to give our panel, our roundtable, a big round of applause. And thank you so much for your time. I think we have some light refreshments being served now for those of us who are here today in person. So if you'd like to head out, they're just up towards the left, towards the middle space. Thank you.